Pokémon is a bright game with cute moments that are not really scary, but some parts feel completely wrong. Creepy music, ghost Pokémon, and creepypasta. And that is why Pokémon is way scarier than you remember. Every other town in the Kanto region feels like a celebration of life. Pallet Town is a quite sunny birthplace. Cities like Cerulean and Celadon are bustling with color, music, and energy at every single corner. The world feels safe, vibrant, and bright. But the second you cross the threshold into Lavender Town, the entire game shifts. The upbeat, adventurous music vanishes completely. It is instantly replaced by a cold, repetitive chime that crawls underneath your skin. Junichi Masuda's score utilizes discordant patterns and harsh, overlapping high register notes to build pure, unfiltered discomfort. You walk into a town entirely defined by grief. People are actively mourning via dead Pokémon, openly crying over the companions they've lost. This jarring shift is what allowed old-school game creepypastas to spread like wildfire. Around 2010, an internet urban legend surfaced on forums like Pastebin, birthing one of the most infamous myths in digital history, Lavender Town Syndrome. The story claimed that the original 1996 Japanese version of Pokémon Red and Green contained a completely different version of the background track. According to the myth, the audio contained raw, high-pitched binaural tones, one so intense that they drove hundreds of Japanese children to end their own lives. Looking back, the premise sounds absurd. It is easy to laugh at how easily a generation of kids believed a story so blatantly fabricated, but at the time, the sheer isolation of the town made anything feel possible. The legend grew so massive that later internet extensions claimed running the track through an audio spectrogram would reveal images of the alphabetical Pokémon you known, physically spelling out a direct warning, "Leave now." While the mass suicide myth is completely fake, the core obsession with the track never truly died. To this day, audio enthusiasts still analyze the differences between the original Japanese cartridge and the localized Western releases, tracking how developers altered the exact frequencies to tone down the song's natural exhausting dissonance. The myth of Lavender Town Syndrome is a complete fabrication, but the actual real lore in the first ever Pokémon game has some creepiness to hide. The Pokémon Tower is absolutely scary. Before you even arrive in town, the game establishes a remarkably dark narrative. Team Rocket has invaded the multi-story cemetery. They are here for poaching and hunting wild Cubone to violently strip the valuable skulls from their heads for corporate profit. During this invasion, a wild Marowak stands her ground, and she fights off the poachers to buy time for her child to escape. The young Cubone gets away, but the mother is killed in the struggle. This was a violent and sudden death filled with anguish. Due to this, her restless spirit stays trapped behind, and she haunts the staircase of the 6th floor. The ghost completely blocks the path, stopping anyone from reaching the top level where Team Rocket is holding an elder named Mr. Fuji hostage. When you fully confront her, the game mechanics take a jarring turn, turning the game into pure psychological helplessness and subvert standard game logic in two major ways. First, there is the fear lockout. Without a specific item, the ghost manifests as an unidentifiable pixelated shadow. When you try to send out your team, the text box delivers a chilling realization. Your Pokémon are completely frozen by fear. They refuse to listen to your commands or execute a single attack, and your only option is to run away. To break this psychological illusion, you are forced to leave the town entirely, and you have to travel to Celadon City, infiltrate a hidden criminal hideout, defeat Giovanni, and claim the Sylph Scope. Only when you return and look through the scope does the shadow clear, revealing the true identity of the level 30 Marowak. But even with the illusion shattered, you hit the second mechanical horror, the uncatchable status. The core rule of Pokémon is simple, that if you encounter a wild creature, you can catch it. But Game Freak hard-coded this specific encounter to completely break that rule. If you attempt to throw any type of Pokeball, the screen tells you she dodges it completely. The game rejects the capture, and even if you put the Marowak to sleep or freeze it solid, the ball still misses. Even the Master Ball, an item specifically programmed to have a guaranteed 100% catch rate under any circumstance, fails instantly here. Only by defeating her in battle can you finally put an end to her pain. You neutralize her restless energy, calm her spirit, and watch as her soul finally fades away to the afterlife. If you want to survive through, like and subscribe so that you can help and support us. Unlike older ghost encounters that deliberately put you in a haunted house or remote cemetery, this event catches you completely off guard. If you head to North Boulevard in the Kalos region's Lumio City, you can enter an unmarked, completely ordinary office building standing right next to a fighting dojo. On the surface, it looks like any other corporate environment in the game. Entering the elevator makes a big difference in how it feels. The screen flashes pitch black a few times, casting a sense of dread over the area. When the light returns, a character using the Hex Maniac trainer model is standing directly behind you. Instead of moving naturally, her character model remains completely still and frozen, gliding eerily across the floor tiles as if floating in midair. She paths directly around your character, stares, and delivers a cryptic message. No, you're not the one. Then, she glides right off the edge of the screen and vanishes into thin air. If you desperately search the rest of the office floor, you find absolutely nothing. The room is empty, and none of the nearby NPCs acknowledge the haunting that just took place right in front of them. What the developers did was quite interesting, as they deliberately scattered a trail of breadcrumbs across the region, heavily implying a dark, hidden narrative that the mainline games never explicitly resolved. If you visit the nearby luxury hotel Rishisim and take the elevator to the 4th floor, you can find another Hex Maniac standing entirely alone, her face pressed flat against the wall. If you try to talk to her, she brushes you off with a chilling whisper. "Don't talk to me. If I do, I won't hear the elevator." Walk over to the Lumio's train station, and you can find a hidden note scratched onto the back of the timetable sign. It reads, "I'm going to go for help. Wait in the usual place." The mystery spreads even further when you look at the follow-up games, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Deep within the foggy graves of Mount Pyre, another Hex Maniac stands completely still. If you interact with her, she utters the exact same phrase from the Kalos office building. No, you're not the one. The developers never provided an official answer. The community spent years data mining the game code and building complex theories to answer a single question: who is the one? Some fans point straight to the deepest lore of the region, tying her to AZ, the tragic immortal 9-foot-tall ancient king of Kalos. The theory suggests that she might be a lingering spirit from the catastrophic ultimate weapon war that occurred 3,000 years ago, hopelessly searching the modern world for her lost king. But the most grounded and deeply unsettling theory looks outside the game entirely. Many believe the entire encounter is a direct nod to the elevator game, a highly infamous Japanese urban legend and ritual creepypasta. In that myth, performing a specific sequence of elevator button presses is said to transport you to a dark alternate dimension, an empty world where a mysterious non-human woman might step into the elevator with you, and where the most critical rule of survival is to never speak to her and never look her in the eye. That chilling line in Mount Pyre isn't the only haunting tied to Hoenn's Mountain of the Dead. It directly connects to Phoebe, a member of the region's Elite Four. Phoebe specializes in ghost types. She openly claims to have a deep supernatural connection with human spirits. But the developers didn't just relegate this trait to a few throwaway lines of dialogue. They built a frame-by-frame haunting right inside her championship chamber. When you challenge Phoebe in the Gen 6 remakes, the camera pans around the room during the pre-battle conversation. If you look closely at the background, a small child is sitting perfectly still in the chair behind her. The screen cuts to black for a split second, then the perspective shifts. The camera angle suddenly frames the room from the exact point of view of the empty chair. It tracks forward, gliding toward your character from behind. When the camera cuts one final time, the girl is standing right next to you. Her face is barely visible. She vanishes the moment the battle starts, and the game never explains her purpose. To understand why these entities cluster around Phoebe, you have to look at where she developed her talents. She spent her life training at Mount Pyre, a massive towering graveyard for deceased Pokémon. In the original Game Boy Advanced games, the foggy summit of this mountain is guarded by an old married couple who watch over the sacred red and blue orbs. But the remakes introduce a tragic shift. If you return to the summit later in the game, the old woman is completely gone. Only the old man remains, standing entirely alone in the wind. After you complete the post-game Delta episode, you can find Phoebe hanging around that exact summit. She is standing by herself, talking and laughing out loud with absolutely nobody there. If you interact with her and tell her you came to the mountain to train, she mentions she is just visiting her grandmother. If you tell her you are there to pay respects, She smiles. She tells you that her grandmother was just talking about you and how you left a lasting impression on her. The game's internal trainer's eyes feature explicitly confirms that her grandmother resides on that mountain. The old woman guarding the summit passed away. She's dead. But Phoebe isn't mourning. She is standing on a lonely peak, casually laughing and gossiping with a corpse. In Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, deep within the Eterna forest of the Sinnoh region, stands an abandoned manor, the Old Chateau. The building is completely decrepit, rotting from the inside out, and heavily infested with aggressively wild Ghastlian Haunter. But the real horror of the chateau has nothing to do with wild Pokemon. If you explore the empty rooms under specific conditions, you will encounter two distinct human apparitions. Replaying their final moments, first there is the butler. If you walk into the large empty dining hall, an old man sprite appears on the opposite side of the long wooden table. His body remains perfectly rigid as he glides sideways across the floor, passing straight through the kitchen wall and vanishing into thin air. Then there is the little girl. If you head upstairs and walk into one of the side bedrooms, a child sprite appears in the adjacent room. She glides away from your field of view and blinks out of existence. The game never includes a book or an NPC to explain what happened to this family. Game Freak leaves the environment completely silent. However, they didn't leave any hints behind. If you walk into the kitchen where the butler vanished and interact with the trash can, your text box updates. You find a single item, an antidote. In the Pokemon universe, an antidote is used to cure poison. Finding a single discarded antidote inside a kitchen trash can paints a deeply disturbing picture of the manor's final hours. The family and their staff were poisoned. The inhabitants died right there in the dark. Decades later, the ghosts of the staff are still trying to clean up the kitchen, and the children are still trapped in their bedrooms. The poisoning in the Old Chateau is a hidden tragic history, but in the Unova region, the dead don't just stay hidden in the woods. They wander modern infrastructure. When you cross the marvelous bridge in Pokemon Black and White, you are walking on a massive high-tech suspension bridge. It feels completely safe, but as you walk along the concrete path, a little girl is standing near the railing. If you try to step close to her, she instantly blinks out of existence. A nearby NPC notices your confusion. The old woman explains a dark detail. Long before the bridge was ever built, a little girl used to play in this exact empty field with her pet Abra. The secrets behind this girl are revealed in the sequel, Black and White 2. Near the base of Reversal Mountain sits the strange house. The building is a ruined shifting maze where furniture moves on its own. As you navigate the dark hallways, the ghost girl appears again. This time, she speaks. Her dialogue is frantic and heartbreaking because she cries out for her parents, calls for her Abra, and speaks about being trapped in an everlasting nightmare that she cannot escape. She mentions a specific item, the lunar wing, and tells you that a voice spoke to her in her dreams. But the voice told her to stop searching for the wing, and it told her to just give up and stay in the dark with them forever. The girl honestly believed the voice belonged to her father, but it really wasn't. When you finally locate the lunar wing hidden deep within the house, her spirit appears one last time. She asks you to take the artifact and deliver it to the legendary Pokemon Cresselia. She explains that she spent a long time waiting on the marvelous bridge to return the wing herself, but she simply can't do it anymore. The house library holds the final pieces of the puzzle. The bookshelves contain detailed research entries on two specific entities, Cresselia and Darkrai. In Pokemon lore, the lunar wing is the only object capable of dispelling terminal nightmares that are actively projected by Darkrai. The horrific reality becomes clear. A malicious Darkrai targeted a completely innocent child. It locked her mind inside a permanent, terrifying hallucination. It mimicked her father's voice in the dark to keep her from seeking help. The nightmare was so relentless that the child's body completely gave out. Darkrai literally scared a little girl to death, leaving her wandering spirits trapped on a bridge that didn't even exist when she was alive. Darkrai was clearly haunting this poor girl, but there is another creepy Pokemon that does things that are way scarier. Look at Drifloon. On the surface, it is one of the most innocent designs in the entire franchise. It is a round purple balloon with a patch of yellow tape for a mouth and two thin strings ending in little heart-shaped hands. It looks like a prize a child would carry around at a carnival, but the official lore turns this cute aesthetic into a wandering predator. The Pokedex entry in Pokemon Sun states that Drifloon actively targets the youth of the Pokemon world. The lore claims that it reaches down, grabs the hands of small children, and drags them away to the afterlife. Then the game adds a bizarrely terrifying detail. It explicitly notes that Drifloon dislikes heavy children. It is physically lifting them, but if a child weighs too much, the balloon lacks the carrying capacity to float away. It is actively calculating the weight of the human children it encounters, looking for the ones light enough to steal. The horror gets even worse when you look at the creature's anatomy. It isn't made of rubber. It isn't filled with regular air. The Pokemon Ultra Moon entry reveals that if its body ever bursts, its soul spills out with a loud screaming sound. It is a prison holding a collection of screaming human spirits. Every single time you use Drifloon in a battle, and every time you let it take a heavy hit from an opponent, you risk the structural integrity of a skin that holds trapped agonizing souls. In the Sinnoh region, a wild Drifloon appears outside the Valley of Windworks every single Friday. It stands perfectly still in the overworld, waiting outside a building where families work. Drifloon hunts children from the outside world, but the wilderness itself takes lives too, and the game turns those lost lives into a collectible monster. Look at Phantump. It looks like a small, harmless forest sprite, just a tiny floating tree stump with green leaves and glowing red eyes peeking out of hollow wooden holes. But its origin is pure tragedy. The official Pokédex entries from Pokemon Y and Alpha Sapphire state that these creatures are stumps, possessed by the spirits of children who died while lost in the forest. Pokemon Sun strips away any remaining ambiguity. It explicitly confirms that after a child passes away, while lost in the woods at least, their soul possesses a tree stump, creating the Pokemon. The game adds one final chilling detail. Its cries sound like eerie screams. When you hear a Phantump call out in the tall grass, you aren't just listening to a typical animal noise. You are listening to the final panicked cries of a child who died alone in the dark. Sometimes, the creepiness of Pokemon hides in the open ocean under the guise of absolute elegance. We are talking about Gorbis. It is framed as a beautiful pink majestic deep-sea creature. It has long flowing features and a bright innocent appearance. Trainers catch it expecting a graceful swimmer for their team, but in practice, its hunting methods are pure body horror. The official Pokemon Sapphire Pokédex entry reveals a remarkably cruel feeding mechanism beneath that beautiful exterior. When Gorbis targets prey, it captures them with exceptional grace. Then, it inserts its long, thin, needle-like mouth directly into the prey's flesh. It drains them dry. It siphons away every single drop of their internal bodily fluids while they are still trapped. Other official descriptions add that once Gorbis is finished feeding, the hollowed-out carcass is simply cast aside, sinking straight to the dark ocean floor to be picked clean by scavengers. We are looking at a deep-sea vampire and a ruthless predator disguised as a beautiful prize, swimming peacefully inside your party. Hypno is definitely the scariest Pokemon, because the official game data writes its creepy lore right in the game. The entry in Pokemon Fire Red states it carries a pendulum-like device, and it also explicitly mentions an incident where it took away a child it hypnotized. Pokemon Sun confirms another case blanketed in mystery, where a Hypno carried off a child. The developers also built a quest around this. In Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, you travel to the Sevi Islands, and a panicked father begs you to find his young daughter, Lostel. She wandered into the berry forest and disappeared, so you search the deep woods and find her trapped at the very end. You find her crying and frozen in fear, and then a wild Hypno instantly jumps out to attack you. The game confirms this wild Hypno was the entity that abducted her. This official kidnapping event heavily inspired the community. Internet creators wrote a famous creepypasta song titled Hypno's Lullaby. The song uses the eerie Lavender Town music as a backing track, and the lyrics are written from Hypno's perspective. It describes luring children away from their homes and locking them in a cave forever. The Pokemon Company knows about this dark reputation, and they have actively leaned into it. The official Japanese Pokemon Center previously released a special t-shirt line. The shirt features a dark stylized sketch of Hypno walking through the night. It shows the Pokemon leading two small children away by the hand. The product looks exactly like a creepy urban legend illustration, but it came straight from the official store. Pokemon usually kicks off with an undeniable sense of adventure. You leave your bright, sunlit hometown, step onto a colorful route, and start building a team of pocket monsters. It feels completely innocent, but when you step into the dark, hollowed-out ruins of the Unova region's relic castle, that innocence vanishes. The upbeat route music disappears entirely, and it is replaced by a low, hollow echo that makes the desert ruins feel deeply claustrophobic. As you wander through the sinking sand, you encounter a shadow floating in the dark, Yamask. On paper, it is just another ghost type to capture, but when you look closely at its design, the real discomfort sets in. It is a wandering human soul. Underneath its staring red eyes, its lower shadow loop tightly clutches a gold mask. The official Pokédex entry reveals that the mask is a literal replica of the human face it possessed when it was still alive. The game descriptions explicitly state that Yamask will look at this replica of its own dead face and cry. It actively remembers its past life, its human family, and everything it lost. Pokemon canon even proves that if a living human makes the mistake of putting on that golden mask, Yamask will completely possess them, taking over their mind and body. The Pokemon Company acknowledges these dark undertones, and they embrace them completely too. The perfect example came in 2014, when the official Japanese Pokemon website launched a special Halloween campaign which was titled Honto wa Kawaii Pokemon. No, I'm not kidding. Honto wa Kawaii is the question. Anyways, that translates deeply to actually scary Pokemon? The internet simply calls it Kwapoke. To lean entirely into the horror aesthetic, they hired Junji Ito, the undisputed master of Japanese body horror manga, known globally for creating Uzumaki and Tomie. The brand gave him full permission to strip away the cartoon exterior and redesign their creatures. Ito produced two official deeply unsettling illustrations. The first features Banette. The drawing is a hyper-detailed spine-chilling sketch set in a pitch-black alleyway. Banette hides in the shadows, stalking a little girl who is walking home with a brand new plush doll. The image matches the game's official lore perfectly. Banette is a discarded plush toy brought to life by pure malice, hunting down the specific child who threw it in the trash. The second illustration features Gengar. It depicts the ghost cornering a terrified boy in the dark. He loses his friendly round shape. It is drawn with a grotesque, hyper-realistic face, executing a disturbing lick attack that looks straight out of a nightmare. They distributed them as official digital wallpapers for fans. They even printed the drawings on limited edition t-shirts sold directly through the official Pokemon store. The creators of this franchise know exactly what kind of monsters they have built. If Pokemon Red was the first Pokemon game you ever played, then watch this video on 20 minutes of useless Pokemon Red facts.